Welcome to the HR Huddle podcast, presented by Sapient Insights Group, the ultimate resource for all things HR. It's time to get in the huddle.
Welcome to Spilling the Tea on HR Tech, where we focus on the hottest HR tech news everyone needs to know to be in the know. We break down the news of the week and help you make sense of what it means for our industry and how it can impact your organization. We're recording today on February. It's already February 8th, 2024, bringing you all the news you can use this week. I'm your host, Stacey Harris, Chief Research Officer and Managing Partner of Sapient Insights Group, a research and advisory firm. And joining me today is my co-host, Cliff Stevenson, Director of Research and Principal Analyst for Sapient Insights Group. Welcome to the show, Cliff. We got lots of news going on, but I think we're getting to a manageable level of brew this week. It's not as much as we had last week, right?
That's right. We've got just a normal pot of tea rather than the gallon that we might have had before. But it's a very rich, a full-bodied tea. We're going to be talking a lot about some investments, some funding, some money, some moves at the executive suite. And there might be an appearance by everyone's favorite Sesame Street character, Elmo.
All right. Now, first of all, if we're talking about Elmo, we have to be very aware. That's not to confuse that. We actually have an LMS HR application in Australia that is ELMO. It's not. We're actually talking about the Sesame Street character, right?
That's right.
Okay. All right.
I don't know if he's technically a Muppet, but he's a fine fellow. So.
All right. We'll get into that before we wrap up today. Before we get started, though, I do want to make sure people realize a little bit of where they can catch up with us, what we're doing right now, and how they can talk to us if they need to. First off, just a reminder that I'm going to be in the San Francisco Bay Area in April for two big events. One is the Oracle Application Summit in April, as well as the Workday Innovation Summit. So basically back-to-back 2 weeks in April. That's going to be fun. I'll bring you all the news from what both those organizations are talking about. I'm also going to be, I believe, in Austin. I think that's the final location I got for a PlanSource customer advisory event where we'll be doing a presentation on updated topics in the HR space around March 21st. So if you're in that area, let me know. I'd love to catch up with you. And then both Cliff and I are going to be participating in a really important new program that we're launching here at Sapient Insights Group. If you're interested, we have about 2 spots left where we're really excited that we've reached our limit on our cohort, but it's a 6-month immersive education series called Building an Adaptable HR System Strategy, What Works, Concept to Business Case to Outcomes, starting in the end of March, beginning of April. This is really powerful, Cliff, because you and I have delivered a workshop for the last 3 years now, or at least I for 3 years, you for last year, at the annual HR Technology Conference, which we'll be back at again, as usual. But every year, that workshop that we try and get into 3 hours at the beginning of the event about building an HR system strategy, we hear the same feedback that people want more. They need more depth, more tools, more time, just more ability to be able to think through the concepts that we're sharing. And so we are now, for the first time, and our goal is to continue to do this on an ongoing basis, rolling out the 6-month immersive education program. It's a cohort series. It will have 2 90-minute sessions a month that will really walk through the educational component, but we've also built in a coaching and mentoring component too. And this is really exciting for us because we're always telling people, increase your HR strategy, increase your approach to connecting to the business goals. And we're going to be able to provide you, hopefully, a step-by-step walkthrough of that along with some skill development. I mean, Cliff, you sat with us at that workshop last year. I think it was the first time you got to see us do the workshop was last year's, wasn't it?
That's right. And getting all the feedback, as you said, and watching people do it live, that's exactly what people were saying. How do we I want to get more in depth on this. This is very important work. Obviously, it's a big topic. But I think what makes it so powerful is that we are using our data. We always are talking about it, but it's so important to be able to tie it to those business outcomes, being able to have that and having that sort of framework around this rather than just sort of being abstract concepts, but really making it personalized for you, the person taking the workshop. So I'm very excited to watch this take place and evolve and grow and work with everyone.
Yeah, I think that the most exciting thing for me is that, like I said, we've heard a lot about what people need on the sort of the knowledge and technical. We've got a whole benchmarking process that goes into this workshop. We've got tools and templates and an actual piece of technology. We're going to be filling out all of your sort of current state, future state, all of those kind of things. But the other thing that I was excited about is working with my partner, Susan Richards, and basically coming up with the idea that one of the things we hear over and over again is that most of the organizations, they have some of the general idea of how to put a strategy together. They have the basic kind of tools there. But it's also this idea they've got to build a business case and then present that business case and share it at the executive level and have the conversations with the functions and have the conversations with all the organizations. We actually just did a whole article on sort of how to work collaboratively as a team and building an RFP for your HR technology. It's a hard thing to do. And it takes a lot of leadership. It takes a lot of personal sort of courage and strength sometimes to sort of give reasons as to why maybe you want to think about technology that has better engagement opportunities versus maybe technology that might be a little bit more cost effective. What's the value proposition of investing in the people-based technology in ways that maybe doesn't look immediately like a business connection? But that's work that we all have to do. And so one of the big things that Susan and I talked about was the idea of that sort of executive level coaching. How many times have we all stood in front of the mirror getting ready to go into that big meeting or that boardroom or that thing and say, God, everybody gets executive coaching, but the HR function, we're always the ones kind of giving the coaching, giving the advice. And so that was a real big thing for me and her when we were collaborating on this, was how do we bring that to a course like this? So we're excited. If you're interested in participating, if you have someone you feel would fit in this kind of a program, this first inaugural session is going to be nice because it is a little bit of a price break because it's inaugural. And also it will be an opportunity to work with a lot of really great companies who are also wanted to kind of come in and get this started with us. So yeah, I'm excited, Cliff. But by the time we talk to the audience again, another couple of weeks, we'll be about a month away from start off for that. So that'll be fun.
Yeah. It's very exciting. It's cool to see it build from the ground up. Yep. And you mentioned the sort of price discount. I think that's a good segue into talking about fundraising, right? And
where the world's at these days, it's all about money, right?
That's right. And quite a bit of it. Things aren't, we talk a lot here about really getting the stories because it can be sometimes overwhelming. You only hear sort of the bad news, but there's a lot of interest in one that we saw from Compa. They're a compensation company, does compensation analysis and the tech, and they just closed a $10 million round of funding, a Series A funding, to help bring some of that data to their clients and customers and expand their business.
Yeah, this one is really exciting. We spoke with Charlie, who is their founder and CEO, probably maybe it was, I think it was not long after we started the company in 2020, right after I had moved over from Sierra Cedar. And someone had recommended that I speak with him. And they said, he's got this tool that's really interesting because it's very compensation focused. And I remember we looked at it, myself and Terry Zipper, because at that point in time, Terry had just come off of doing a lot of compensation work. She's got a really strong background in compensation, for those who know Terry Zipper, my partner. And we were both sort of fascinated by this application. I think I put it that year in sort of the emerging tech applications to watch, because what he was doing was taking compensation data and making it more accessible at the recruiting level. And I think that's an interesting conversation. And Cliff, you were in recruiting a long time. And how many times is the recruiter stuck because the compensation bands aren't working for the talent that an organization needs? And they oftentimes, you're at cross issues with recruiting. And so what they were trying to do was provide data on not just what compensation was within the company, but also data on what compensation they're seeing from the candidates to be able to have a better pay equity conversation, particularly, but all across the board compensation conversation as well. I mean, Cliff, from your experience working in recruiting, I mean, compensation is kind of the last thing oftentimes. I mean, now we have a lot of transparency, but still it tends to be, you got to find the right fit, you got to find the right background, got to find the right skills, and then you start talking compensation generally, right?
Yeah, and it's really become even more complex, right? As you mentioned, it has to do with not just what the candidate might expect, but also sort of the driving market and the broader market. And it's really important for two reasons. One is when you have emerging tech, new jobs, new skills, it's important to be able to get data that's up to date, and recent, because that's the only kind you're going to be able to use to properly sort of determine what the price point is for these skills. But also with way more people working from home, it's a better understanding of the nuances between different geographies and expectations and needs for those different areas that before was a little tighter, right? When you were only hiring in a certain geography and was a little easier to manage. So it's very important to be able to have accurate and broad-based data across. So extremely important in the world of recruiting.
And it's probably important to note that if funding at this level, particularly Series A level, it's really slowed down. If you speak to George LaRoque or Anita, both friends of ours who sort of speak to sort of the investment space in the HR technology, and both of their reports this year have shown that investments are down dramatically in the HR tech space this year compared to where they were at over the last 2 years, because coming out of COVID, they had a really high investment rates. So to get this level of investment at a Series A is really powerful. And I think it goes to show, because we're also seeing similarly plans for more investment, I think, in other sort of compensation softwares like PayScale's World and Salary.com, both two vendors who play in this space pretty heavily. We're also seeing the ERP vendors invest heavily in putting more into their compensation tools. We know there's some plans both across all the Oracle's, Workdays, and SAP SuccessFactors around compensation, but we're expecting to see even more compensation conversations come up in sort of the engagement survey kind of space, which is sort of an interesting one. But that idea of performance ratings, compensation, and engagement sort of all tied together have definitely been increasing in the world that we're talking to people around. So I think this is the start of what will be a much broader compensation conversation in the market, which I hope will lead to not just more transparency and pay equity, but to a real global compensation conversation, right?
Yeah. And as you said, this does mark sort of a new trend, a new thing we're seeing, which is an increase in investment early in 2024. That ties into one of the other stories we had seen earlier in this week, which was Acadian Ventures announcing their Fund 2, a $30 million fund that will be used for early stage work technologies. So clearly, as we saw just from the last one, and I believe that they might be one of the backers for that funding that Compa just put in, if that's correct. But they are very pleased. They really are excited to say that they've got, at this point, 60 million of assets under management, and their first fund was only around 10 million. So this is about triple what they saw before. So really a sign of increased expectations from the abilities of these new techs to sort of meet the needs of the audiences, right?
Yeah, and Acadian's, I think, a really unique investment firm. I think people probably, if you haven't heard the name, I would definitely follow who they're investing in. Not only are sort of their primary fund managers is Jason Crisello and Thomas Otter, who Thomas Otter comes from the analyst space. We've known him for a long time, also worked at SAP SuccessFactors for many years. Jason Crisello has worked in the industry for years, a big player in sort of Cornerstone and other big organizations. But they've also got on their advisory area, David Clark, who's been in the space for a long time, Leanne Levensaler, who used to head up strategy and was one of the early employees over at Workday, and Ryan McQueenie. I just think that these funds, that the things that they're investing in, they have a bit of a finger on the pulse of the market. And that's always nice to see, that someone actually understands HR and understands the value of HR as they're investing in these organizations. I think it's really hard sometimes when you see money and investment go into software that has a lot of marketing or is a pretty dollar or has a good handshake, but they don't really understand the HR space. And we've seen that over the last couple of years. And I think now we're starting to get back to investments that are really founded in hardcore facts around some of this. So this is exciting. And I think Compa is a really good example of the kind of company that's unique and interesting. But across the board, I think you're going to see more expectation from funding for HR technology, that there's a real functional component to that capability, that organizations are able to show what value they're going to bring to the bottom line. And it's going to be a lot harder, I think, for those startups to get some of the funding. I hope it doesn't cause issues for some of the startups that we are looking at who have a lot of different leadership in the market, because we need to see more leadership in this market. A lot more. I'd love to see more diversity in the ranks of ownership of HR technology.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just good for everyone, right? That's good for buyers when there's more of that competition out there and there's more diversity in, as you said, the leadership. But speaking of leadership, excellent segue, Stacey. Thank you. Because we're going to have, well, I should say, not a new CEO, but a sort of official announcement formalizing what had been a co-CEO relationship over at Workday, with Carl Eschenbach taking over on February 1st, officially named the Workday CEO. Now, that is something I think we've brought up on this show before. We've been talking about what's been going over there. You've worked closely with pretty much everyone here. Is that right, Stacey?
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. I think Workday's doing a lot of leadership changes, so I would definitely watch all the different announcements that are going on. Where I think there is an opportunity with this change in leadership to kind of, for Workday to sort of really sort of open its arms quite a bit wider for the partners and for the relationships that they've always held and always been very good at. But Carl Eschenbach, I think he's really excited by working with, particularly as they grow internationally, which is a big part of, I think, the long-term strategy for Workday. He's got a strong relationship with the partner levels that you need to have at the distributors and the implementers, those kind of organizations, support staff. He also, I think, has what I really like about Carl is his experience and his belief in service. I think his has a real strong belief in you take care of the customers, then you're going to get, everything will kind of fall into place. And that includes the service of those customers. And I think that's really important for someone like Workday, who's now stepping out of being sort of the underdog, the new kid on the block, to now being one of the top players in the market, really. And I don't think Anil's going to go away. That's what we've been told very clearly. Anil Bhusri is going to stay in more of a technology role, which is what we're seeing a lot of the owners in the space doing. We also saw some movement in the next level down leadership. So David Summers just made an announcement that he has a brand new role. I think there's going to be some other announcements coming out, as we would expect, as sort of other people sort of move around in the organization to kind of fill in those gaps. And it's exciting because as you see people move into whole product strategy roles or whole product roles, and they start sort of connecting the dots for Workday, I think their customers are going to start to feel more of those dots connected. I think that's the direction we're seeing. So it's exciting. I expect that we just saw some leadership change over at SAP as well. And we saw some leadership change that had been mentioned over at Oracle. We're probably going to see more across the board in all these big companies. I think there is, with the innovations around artificial intelligence, with the changes in sort of investment plans and strategies and finances, organizations have to rethink their models and their relationships and their marketplaces. And this is part of that, is rethinking leadership too.
Yeah, and the continuation of something we talked about a couple of weeks ago, which was some restructuring that's just happening to a lot of organizations as they change, as you said, their business model. Mm-hmm. And so it's more changes, and sometimes they're changing names. So here we have one that I think we also had mentioned, but we weren't sure on the exact date, but it has happened. Ceridian is now Dayforce. So they've asked everyone to always refer to Ceridian as Dayforce, which made it a little confusing to do this announcement because I wanted to joke around and say Dayforce is now Dayforce. But that's what they've always called their platform. And I guess just to probably make it less confusing, it's just Dayforce for the company too, right?
Yeah. And this is because I actually thought this has already happened. So this is on my part that I was not paying close enough attention. I thought I think the announcement to be Dayforce, I thought was the announcement that they were Dayforce. So now I realized that was in the works. So I think last week I was like, I guess they're Dayforce. For those who might not understand, Ceridian was a traditional application back in and they actually were known as an original service bureau model for HCM. They had a lot of existing customers. They were one of the larger platforms in the market. They acquired what was Dayforce, which was the smaller SaaS application back at that time. You're going to test me on dates, and I can't remember how long it was.
No. You're winning.
Normally I can remember a date, but I did not pull that one up. And it's in my book. Go look. I have it in the book on my list of dates. But It's been many years at this point now. It shows how long I've been in the industry. And when it happened, I think everybody was like, oh, why are they keeping the Ceridian brand? Well, the Ceridian brand is pretty strong. People knew it very well, right? And so everything was called Ceridian Dayforce for the new platform. And then they had the original platform. As they transitioned everybody over to Dayforce, the newer platform, I think they kept being asked, why are they keeping the two names together? And I think that was the impetus to move to just an all Dayforce organization at this point. And they've shown the value, and they've shown they've been able to grow and scale and still keep some of the services that they had, but not all of them. And so this is a good move in the market. I think to be really honest, for us, it's good because on our matrices, our user experience and vendor stat charts, our hardest problem is fitting the names of all the vendors on. I will not complain if I can sort of cut a name down to one word instead of two. But I think from a buyer's perspective, it might take a little while for the word Ceridian to completely move out of the knowledge space as much as they want it to. Just like Ultimate and Kronos, we still, I think every once in a while, accidentally say those two names when it's UKG, right? Infor and Lawson. Sometimes every once in a while, we have to kind of use both names because we look at it from a customer perspective. The world changes. It is constantly going through acquisition and changes, and this is just one of them, right?
That's right. And it's something I was thinking about that because when we do our survey and we ask people what systems they use, and oftentimes we'll have to sort of sort out which system they mean because they're calling it something else or they know it as something else that may be different from how the company describes themselves, but they're still talking about the same software. So good to know that sort of stuff. And I did a little consulting to my personal copy, signed, don't be jealous, listeners, of Introduction to HR Technology. On page 23, if we all want to turn our books together, we'll find out that in 2012, Ceridian acquires cloud HR, payroll, and time management application Dayforce.
All right, there you go.
Well done. And that's by Stacey Harris.
Now I'm blushing.
Online.
Well, I do want to just add one other thing, and I think it's funny on this note that we've timed this because we will have vendors who will get a little upset with us that we don't put the new name in right away. It takes about 3 cycles of the survey, 3 years for people to realize a name change on aggregate. I mean, there's still people who will often, like we still get people who put Lawson down. It's been many more years than that since Infor acquired Lawson, but it takes about 3 years for that change to really take place. So I hate to tell Ceridian Dayforce or Dayforce this, but it will take a few cycles before they get there, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, doing our part, just good to be aware of. So if you see that, that's what they're referring to. And you'll see they're going to be doing I believe, some advertisement as well. So you'll see that possibly. Another company doing some expansion, Empyrean, they are benefits technology, but they have really put in a lot of enhancements into the platform. I think the thing that stuck out the most to me was really making an emphasis on the user experience and just having more content. This is interesting because we were just talking about learning and how much the importance of that is. And they are really trying to put out being able to design campaigns and announcements or education about the benefits that you might subscribe to. So really taking something that can be very confusing and helping create a better, more seamless experience, a more easy to navigate world, and a better way to help others understand their benefits as well.
Yeah, this one is, it's interesting because Empyrean, I'm not even sure we're saying that right. I'll be honest. I've heard a lot of people pronounce it a lot of different ways, Empire and Empyrean. But what I think is interesting here is in our research in general, for the longest time, Empyrean was just a benefits application tool. And over the last, I think probably about 3 years, they've acquired and they've added more HR application capabilities. I think they always had some, but they've added more. So they're starting to show up in other areas of our research, which is always interesting when you start to see an organization sort of expand more. But I think what you're seeing with something like this, where they're enhancing what they're doing on the benefits space, is they're staking some claim as to the area that they're most well known for. And that I know is a big changing space right now. We just had, like I said, I'll be down at the PlanSource to talk to their customer advisory board. I just had a huge briefing in the last 2 weeks with a couple of benefits platform solution providers who are rethinking the idea of benefits administration and understanding how people not only sort of set it up inside their systems from an admin side, but how they select it as an employee and the kind of things that you ask around it. So I think this is We don't have a lot of spaces left to sort of rework and rethink in the HR space. We've done a lot of work in talent. We've done a lot of work in sort of core HR service delivery, even HR help desks. Benefits is one area where we have not spent, I think, enough time. It needs more attention. And so it's good to see someone like Empyrean sort of take a lead here. They can.
Yeah. And expect benefits, wellness, health, whatever you want to think of it as. There's kind of I was about to say a lighthearted story. I mentioned Elmo, and that's because, this was something an HR executive pointed out, that Elmo has an account on Twitter/X and put out a little question, just says, how's everyone doing? And they noted that normally there's about 60 responses. This had over 20,000 comments. And it was summarized as, Elmo, we are not okay. And they were talking about the dread of going to work and how hard everything was, and just a lot of workplace wellness. They ended up tagging it as such. And Elmo clearly it touched a nerve there, but it does show that it kind of highlights, I think, as it was phrased, the importance of HR's role in helping people with their well-being and their emotional and mental wellness. And it is really what we're doing here, right? That is, at the end of the day, the role of HR when we're talking about all this emerging tech and new and exciting ways that we can help engage people. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is solve these issues of making sure that people are okay at their workplace. So this is interesting just because it shows that this is a big topic for people. And it's good to know that at least Elmo's listening, and we are too, listeners.
Yes. I mean, people often forget that it depends on who you talk to as to the start of HR and what it was. A lot of people, it's a manager compliance kind of thing. But part of it started out as a health and wellness element inside of a lot of organizations back in the day when there was no weekend and there was no 12-hour shifts were the normal, and children were working inside of businesses and doors were locked at shirtwaist factories, those kind of things. HR became the health and wellness department function first. It was the ones that kind of watched out for that area. And I think that conversation can get lost very easily in the conversation of AI and technology and talent and the right people and the right positions and all that kind of language. But if you really think about business outcomes aren't achievable if your people aren't capable of effectively doing the work. It's just as simple as that. And there's a lot of other things that go into it, but at the minimum, they have to be well taken care of. They have to be safe. They have to be secure. They have to feel like they are prepared to do the work that you're asking them to do in a way that is a good environment. And then we can start talking to them about other things that are going on, things we want from them. What's that hierarchy, right?
Maslow's hierarchy needs.
Yeah. And
absolutely. That was really well said.
I think it's so hard. It's so easy for us to forget, right? I think that was the term you used, Cliff. And that I hope, if anything today, people kind of go away thinking about Elmo and his giggle and the fact that HR's got a bigger role sometimes than we often give ourselves credit for, right?
Absolutely. Well, and I also want to say, Stacey, we had almost done an entire episode without mentioning AI, and you just had to throw it in at the end.
My fault. Blame it on me.
Yeah. But that's that human connection, though, that will be something that can't be replaced. Yeah. There's often talk about what's going on with the jobs and is my role important or can I be replaced? And if you're able to connect with people and, as Stacey just said, find what's really important about the role, then you are irreplaceable.
Exactly. Well, guys, it's been a fun. I mean, I have to say fun, but it's been a bit of a romp down memory lane. A lot of these conversations were today, Cliff. So
yeah, I'd say it was fun. I had fun.
Yeah, I do want to say a couple of quick things for our listeners. One is we are getting ready to update the annual HR system survey. We do this every year in February. It's a big part of what February is for us. Is meetings around what we're going to update, what we're going to change, what vendors are new, what organization names have changed, but also what questions we want to ask. And so just letting you guys know a couple of things we already know are going to be on the docket this year. We are going to be asking a lot more questions this year about the HRIS or HRIT or workforce analytics or workforce systems position. We're still kind of figuring out terms and names, but we always ask a little bit about that, but we're going to ask more this year because that seems to be an area we get a lot of questions, and we're definitely going to be asking some more compensation questions this year. Cliff, anything else already that from the conversations you've had that we're planning on sort of either asking more of or maybe even taking off the survey this year?
Well, we're definitely going to go a little more in depth into AI. We were prescient enough last year to take it a step beyond just saying, are you using AI-backed technologies, and asking about ethical use. And that's been of a lot of interest because people are starting to say, oh, what do we need to have in place if we're going to be using some of these new technologies? What are some of the concerns? And so I think we want to do the same thing, expand into that, not just as are you using it, but how are you using these different technologies and what are some of the issues that you're running into and how are you solving these? So we can tie that to business outcomes is what we do and really see where the impact is being made. So look forward to that. And if it's something you've got an opinion on, you're seeing some stuff at your organization, the survey is the best time to get it out there. This is the time. Let your voice be heard. It really is the voice of the customer. It's not just a tagline. So really looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. We are, and this is the time to talk to us. So as we wrap up today, a couple other big things. If you are looking to actually do a system selection right now, or you're looking at trying to understand market landscape, or you're looking to try and understand how to build a system strategy or how to do change management, all of that can be found in the annual report, which you can find on our website at sapientinsights.com and at our research marketplace. Feel free to go access that. We also have an overview document that'll give you a good summary of what's going on in that paper, which we cover over 200 vendors in this year's report and input from over 5,000 HR practitioners. Every time I say those numbers, it just makes me smile, Cliff.
Yeah,
also,
it's wild.
It is every year everyone tells you have to ask fewer questions. Nobody wants to answer that many. And every year we get one or two comments about just how long the story is, but the rest of them are always like, this is interesting. This is cool. So I do think people are interested about where the stuff is at. Also, go to our website to sign up for our newsletter to get ongoing updates on research launches, where we'll be speaking or visiting, and when you can participate in the annual survey, which again is open May 1st to the public. So put that on your calendar. Be sure to listen to our sister HR Huddle podcast, HR We Have a Problem, on the opposite week from ours, hosted by our CEO, Terry Zipper, and the HR Huddle episodes. If you really like what you're hearing, please be sure to support the podcast by subscribing and leaving a rating and review where you grab your podcast. I think, Cliff, I know they're going to put an announcement out, but we hit 10,000, didn't we? That's already it passed last week, right?
Yeah. And congratulations to us, but congratulations to you, because that's you, the listeners, 10,000 downloads of our podcasts. We are humbled. We are grateful. It's amazing. It sort of, as we kind of bring in this theme together, it sort of validates what we're doing. And sometimes we worry, are we just nerding out about HR? But no, people seem to be there with us, and we welcome it all into the warm and loving embrace of HR nerdery.
Definitely. I think that's my new t-shirt, HR nerdery. There you go.
There we go.
To stay up to date with immediate breaking HR tech news and get all the behind the scenes on content, you can follow us at Sapient Insights on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram as well. LinkedIn is really the best place. That's where we're kind of putting all of our content out these days. If you really want to see some good photos, I would say Instagram's where we're going for there, but LinkedIn's probably the best place to reach us. Thanks, Cliff, as always, for putting together the content for this session this week. And also thanks to our production team, including Brand Method Media Group, who helps us to produce our podcast, run by the amazing founder, Kelly, which, by the way, if you haven't had a chance, she's got some great new content in her own podcast that I'm just going out there. Go to Brand Method Media Group. She's now talking about her marketing tips. We really appreciate all the hard work Kelly has done for us. And she came up with our logo and our colors, which everybody knows we kind of love our pinks. Cliff and I did a webinar today, very pink. And so Kelly's amazing in that. And our marketing team, Lisa Renko and Summer Orlano, Summer. Thanks to our listeners and community. We couldn't do this without you. Honestly, we really couldn't. And that's it for this episode of Spilling the Tea on HR Tech. We hope it's been just the brew you needed to start the engines running this week. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another pot of boiling hot HR tech updates and insights. Bye, everyone.
Bye.